Hi, welcome to the homework help video. This is problems number 5, 6, 7, and maybe even 8 from worksheet number 9. Let's go ahead and get started. Number 5, the square root of -4 times the square root of -25. Well, when we take the square root of -4, we know 4 is a perfect square, and since it's got a negative on it, this would become 2i. When we multiply that one times the square root of -25, well, square root of -25 is the same thing as 5i. We can take that and get 10i squared. Now we know that when you have I squared, it's not simplified. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change that to a -1. And now when we multiply it, we're going to get our answer is -10. Were you able to keep up with me? Good job. Let's move on to number 6. Ooh, 6 has division. I see a fraction in there. So number 6, we have 6 divided by the square root of -2. Now there's a couple ways we could do this one. We could go ahead and clear out the square root of the negative, or we could rationalize the denominator right away. It's up to you. Actually, it's up to me because I'm doing the video. So I'm going to go ahead here and rationalize the denominator. So to rationalize the denominator here, I'm going to have to multiply it by the square root of -2. But if I do it to the bottom, I don't want the top to feel left out, so I'm going to do it to the top too. Now when we multiply it, the square root of -2 times the square root of -2 is going to be -2. And on the top, right now I have the 6 times the square root of -2. Now I wish we could say that we were done, but there's a little bit more that we have to do. We cannot leave this negative inside the square root. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and take the square root. Remember, the square root of -2 is like the square root of -1 times 2, or the square root of -1 times the square root of 2. In which case, the square root of -1 we know is I. So this is I times the square root of 2. Yay! So let's put that in here. We have 6i times the square root of 2. And right now it's over a -2. Well, looking at that, we can probably simplify it a little bit more. 6 and -2 have common factors there. So 6 divided by -2 is -3. So what we really end up with is -3i times the square root of 2. And we're done. Yay! Let's move on to number 7. Ooh, now we have fractions and we have the square roots of negatives in the top and the bottom. So here we go. We could look to try to rationalize the denominators first, or we could take this one here and we could get rid of the square root of the negative at the beginning. Let's try that on this one since we did it the other way on number 6. So the square root of -12, we know the square root of -12 is like -1 times 4 times 3. The square root of -1 we know is I. The square root of 4 is 2. And we can't take the square root of 3, so we're going to leave it inside the square root. So what we've got right now is 2i times the square root of 3. Now on the top, we can do the square root of 18 first. So the square root of -18 turns into -1 times 9 times 2. Well, we can take the square root of -1. That's going to give us our I. The square root of 9 is going to be 3. And then we can't take the square root of 2, so we're going to leave it inside. So we've got 4 times 3 times I times the square root of 2. Now we can simplify that there and call that 12I times the square root of 2. On the bottom, we have 2I times the square root of 3. Now, before we try to rationalize the denominator, can this reduce at all? Can we make this a little bit easier? You're right, we can. Let's look at this as 12 divided by 2 is going to give us 6, and then I divided by I will give us 1, so those will cancel out. So what we're really looking at now is 6 times the square root of 2 over the square root of 3. This one's going to be a little bit easier for us to rationalize now. Let's multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. And after we do that, we're going to end up with 6 times the square root of 6. Ooh, I think I got stuff in the way, so I'm going to erase it out of the way. Sorry. Bye-bye. Okay, so here we go. Back to it. We have 6 times, now 2 times 3 inside the radical would be the square root of 6. On the bottom, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. And then we can simplify that one more time, and that's going to give us 2 times the square root of 6. And that's our answer. We did it. We made it. Now, if you're not sure if you got it right, you can always type this in on the calculator and then type in your original problem on the calculator, and it should give you the same decimal. Great job. I'm proud of you. You did great. All right, let's go ahead here and let's stop this video, and we will focus on 8, 9, and 10 in the next one because they're a little different. Okay, thanks for watching.